Hey there, I'm David Lesmes, and you are listening to a podcast that showcases the powerful stories of extraordinary Latinos impacting the world and leaving their mark on the global stage. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to Uprise Latino. Okay, hola, Anto, welcome to this first episode of Uprise Latino. I'm really happy that you're the person that is coming for this episode. When I was thinking on who could be a good person to represent what I think that Latin America is, and how can we create more impact as Latinos, you were one of the first names that came to my mind. So thank you so much for coming to this space. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And also thank you for those words and for thinking about me as a Latina representing Latin America. I'm good. It's been a nice weekend here in Sweden. Summer is leaving us, but but yeah, it's been nice. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation
yes.
again. Mm-hmm.
No worries, my pleasure. Just to remind everyone of the purpose of this, we want to uncover your story as a Latina and
Yes.
how that is reflected in your day-to-day life. So if you can, you just say that you are in Stockholm. I'm also in Stockholm. We are in different places though. Like you are in the south of Stockholm. I'm in the north of Stockholm right now. But how did you arrive to Stockholm? What is the story? How you ended up in the Nordics?
Yeah, it's actually a very random story. So to give a background, I'm a Peruvian. I'm Latina. I'm Peruvian. I'm from Peru. And I was in Peru after, like working there. I mean, I studied international business at university. I started working in some companies for a while, but at the same time, I started doing makeup because I really liked doing makeup. And I started doing this as a hobby. So then I realized that actually I was earning a lot of money with makeup too. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this as a job, as a full-time job. So I decided to give it a chance to my entrepreneurship, and I started also creating content on social media, doing I was starting to also check some competitions and so on. So the community started to increase also in social media and to have like more followers and so on. So I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to start doing this as a full-time job, as I mentioned, right? And then pandemic came, which was bad. I mean, I quit my job at Coca-Cola. I was working in Coca-Cola at the time. And it was amazing for 1 year, like 2019. Yeah, 2019. It was amazing, but then pandemic came, and of course, no one wanted to do makeup because no one had like any event to do makeup for. So that was like a year where I started to think like, okay, what should I do with my life? Like I'm happy doing like virtual classes of makeup right now, but I actually don't know if I would like maybe to have at this time an international experience. So at that moment, I had one of my best friends. He like randomly moved to Sweden, and I didn't know why. So I once told him like, "Hey, what are you doing in Sweden? Like, let's have a catch up or like an update call." I called him, and he told me that he was working for a company that wanted coordinating an internship program to increase diversity and inclusion in the company. I was joking with him and told him like, "Oh, you can increase your KPI by hiring me. Like I'm a Afro-Peruvian." And he was like, actually, there's a position that you probably would like. And then I applied. Actually, I didn't know anything about Sweden at that moment. I just, of course, knew that it was part of the Nordic countries. I knew that it was super cold, but nothing else. And then I applied, and like without expecting so much, to be honest. But then I got the job, and then like next 3 months were like preparations to come here. And then I've been here living here since August 2021. So it's been already 3 years, and it's crazy how fast it has been. Like seems like forever, but also at the same time it seems that time flew. But that's how I arrived here to Sweden. So yeah.
How was that decision? Like when you decided to apply and you said like, okay, I'm going to the Nordics, to a really different context. take me a bit through that. What was happening in your mind at that point?
Yeah, in my mind, I mean, it was a kind of mixed feelings because I was super excited to have this international experience, which is what I wanted. I mean, I manifested it at the end of it was New Year's for 2020, I think, or it was something like that. Or no, sorry, it was like the New Year's for 2021. I was like, okay, I want to have an international experience this year. And then I talked with this friend Franco like February, because I gave myself like a deadline. Until June, I would know what to do internationally. But I was thinking always of like, oh, maybe I'm going to, I don't know, like Spain or something like more similar, like to our culture, like a more easy to you know, get into the society or into the culture, like manage the cultural shock. As I mentioned, like I wasn't expecting, and I didn't knew like the cultural difference that I would have to lead with when I applied to the job here in Sweden. So at that time, when I got the job, I was super happy. I came here to Sweden, and like the first months were like the first month it was like August, September, something like that. It was amazing. Everything was new. Of course, then like I started to realize like how different it was, and like of course all this process of adapting to the new environment, new people, new friends as well. So yeah, it was like a mixture of feelings. Like yeah, it was like that. Mm-hmm.
And in the moment that you arrived, you said like the first couple of months were really nice.
Yeah.
But was there or what was the point where you started to think like, hey, this is getting harder, or like what were those initial conflicts that you had in your mind?
Yeah, I think when I arrived, I mean, it was a new place. It's a beautiful place, Sweden. I arrived in August, so it was like also kind of the end of the summer. So it was amazing. Everything was green. It was beautiful. And also I had like a very welcoming person, a roommate that was living with me. He was from Brazil, and he introduced me to a lot of his friends. So it was super nice because I also had like, I wasn't like alone in the country at some point. At like I wasn't like that. My friend that was living in Sweden, he wasn't living in Stockholm, so I didn't have him at that moment with me here in Stockholm. But I managed to do some friends. The thing is that then when the summer started like fading away, I was like, okay, this is getting cold. And also when I first arrived, and that thing that was also like, I think important for me to realize, okay, I don't know if this is the place to be, or like I don't know like if this is what I want, because I was super focused on, okay, it's good, I have this Brazilian friend, I have this like Latino community, or like international community, but I also want to make Swedish friends, and I want to get into like the Swedish culture, the Swedish society. And then I started to try so hard to like, okay, I want to like go to the office every day to like interact with my colleagues. But then I saw that the interactions weren't the same as I was used to. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work. But then I think, and I had like this process of, is this the right place for me to be? But then I actually realized like, you know what, like I will just like, keep my like the friends that I'm doing, which were great, my international community. I will like just focus on create like real friendships from this group, and instead of focusing on I want to fit in this Swedish society, I was like, I'm gonna do what works for me, and I really like the energy of these people, so I'm gonna focus on creating that community with them. Yeah.
And I can relate. I think that when you immigrate, it's really, there is certain pressure at the beginning to fit in, but as Latinos, we tend to get with other Latinos because it's easier, because there is a common language, there is different or like common things that we enjoy. But how is now? Like, have you feel like you keep that same community, or have you extended that community now to include people from other countries, or how is it right now?
Yeah, it's I think it's like still a mixture. Now I have Swedish friends too, so it's good, and it's also very nice to introduce them to my culture too, and vice versa. I think that's amazing. But yeah, I keep that community. And whenever you were talking about like how is when you arrive, I remembered like this moment when I arrived, and it was like 1 month after I arrived, and then I met this Peruvian friend that we used to work together in Lima. And then she introduced me to her Peruvian friends, and then I posted a picture of like me having Peruvian food and with Peruvian people and with Peruvian music, and people were telling me like, why do you move if you're gonna still like hanging out with Latinos? And I'm like, you know nothing. Like, you have to leave it, like you have to experiment. Like this need of like being home and like having this community is like being close to these Latino people or people that are going through the same migration process, that makes you feel like your heart warmer, and like that you are more like you are not alone in this like process, you know.
And you mentioned that like there was you uploaded a picture and there was certain people like commenting about it, and I think it's fair, but for you it was special because you had a certain following when you were in Peru. So when you moved to Sweden, what was the reaction of your community? How they felt it? What were the main comments that they were making? Like how the community reacted to it?
Yeah, it was super nice because, as I mentioned, like I started like forming this community like since I started like doing makeup. You know, when I like just started, that was like, hey, I'm gonna start doing this, and it was like mainly my friends, but friends like said to other friends, and then like this started growing, so they saw all the process. And like when I started doing other kinds of entrepreneurships, because I like did many things back then, they went through all the process, and I was super like authentic and super open with all the processes. Like I was just basically telling all my life to them, so it was super nice because they were with me together in the whole process. And they got super excited when I was like moving here. They saw, and some of them, they were like super also motivating, because they told me like, oh, you are such an inspiration like for us. Like look at you going to a place that is super different, and like they were rooting for me, so it was super nice. That was amazing. Some of of course my clients, my makeup clients, they were sad, but but yeah. And now, by the way, because I'm not doing any more makeup here in Sweden. I work in a company doing communications, but yeah, I also like talk about this transition and how like now I found like actually a job that I really like, and it was crazy also to find it in like the other side of the world. Yeah,
I feel you.
Never.
And I just want to come back to the point of the restaurants, because I think that is a tendency that I also have, and is every time that I go to a new country, to a new place, one of the first things that I find, or that I try to find in Google Maps, is Colombian restaurant or like Latino restaurant, Brazilian, Peruvian. And I think that is a tendency that all of us have. But I've seen, at least here in Stockholm, and I imagine also in Europe and in other places, that there is a increasing interest on Latin American food or Latin American music. How is that for you? Like, have you felt the same thing?
Yeah,
how
totally.
is happening?
I think totally. Like I can see it more, and that makes me feel super proud as well. Like this interest that people, they are having for our culture, our food, which is amazing. And also, of course, that's why, right? Too that I mean, they want to try, like, who doesn't like to eat good food? So that's good. And also like the music, as you said, like now you can see more of this on like any party, and not just like La Gasolina, which is like the popular song. You actually like can hear like some Brazilian and like Latino music, reggaeton and so on, in like places you wouldn't expect to. Even cumbia. Like the other day I was in a restaurant and I was like, what? Like yeah, it's crazy. So I think we're getting like we're expanding more of this culture and the good things of Latin America, and people are receiving it more in Europe, or at least in this side of the world.
And how how do you think that they are receiving it? What is the experience with your friends? At least with your non-Latino friends, how are they getting to know you? What is that process?
I think it's nice. It's been nice. Actually, with these non-Latino friends, and that's also what makes the difference, I would say. It's people that are super open and super curious for other cultures, that they are like, they know that there's a world besides Sweden, besides Europe. And like apart from that, and they are very curious to experiment and to try these new things. So you can actually see like the difference on this type of people, right? That they are like embracing more like this diversity or like these new cultures, and that also gives them like different horizons, different perspective, which I think is great. So it's super well received, I would say. And every time I like know someone that is not from Latin America and they haven't tried, like I always talk about Peruvian food, so they haven't tried Peruvian food, I'm like, okay, we have to go and like I'm gonna take you to this restaurant. And it's also very nice that they're opening, for example, more like Peruvian restaurants in Stockholm. That's great, and I always like rooting for them, like posting and like reposting like the pictures, tagging them, and yeah, that makes me feel super super proud.
That's really nice. And I also feel it. I feel that there is certain curiosity towards Latino culture, but the pressure also to fit in also exists. In the way that you dress, in the way that you talk, in the way that in your preferences, even in food. So have you felt that? Like how is that for you? Like how has been the process since the moment that you arrived?
Yeah.
How is that evolving?
Yeah, I think it has evolved. Like as I mentioned, like this first month after I arrived, I was like, okay, I came with all my clothes from Peru, right? And they were colorful, obviously, as like I am wearing today. Well, for the ones that are watching the video, but yeah, I mean, when I arrived with these colorful clothes, I was like feeling kind of strange when I was walking in the street, because I was like, okay, maybe I'm not like fitting in this like scene, like in this society, or like more like I felt that I was like the outsider, you know. And of course I am, but I was like, okay, maybe I should wear like more neutral colors. And then I started to like try to go more for the blacks, for the nudes, for those kind of colors. But then I was like, you know what? I'm not feeling myself. Like, why would I do that? Why would I try to like miss my essence just to fit in this society? Like I was like, no way, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And I remember I realized that when I received like a gift from my mom on my birthday. She bought me a jacket from Desigual, which is a brand that we really really like, and it was like the most orange jacket I have ever seen in my life. Like it was like fluorescent, like neon orange. And in Peru, probably I would wear it like super fine. Like I wouldn't have any problem wearing it. But then I was like, when I received it, I was like, I loved the jacket. I loved it. And I was like, but I think this is too much for Sweden. And then I was like, why would I think that, you know? Like I was like, Mom, I think I'm gonna like change the color. Then I asked a friend, and my friend told me like, why would you do that? Just because like the society is not wearing these colors, you are gonna change your essence. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And then after that I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it. Like why would I change just to fit in this society? But I think that's we as humans is like also like kind of an instinct, right? Like you try to fit in a community, you want to be part of a community, and of course you don't want to be excluded. But I think it's super important to keep that essence and like to be surrounded of people that values those essence. So I mean, of course it's gonna be different, and you're gonna be seen like as a different person, but be different is also good, and like keeps the flavor of this and like a flavor to this society and so on. And then actually also another thing that I changed was like well, I for example, I was meeting people like for dates, for example, and I tried to dress more like on neutral colors, because I was like, no, probably not in the first on the first date, because then like I'm gonna like they're gonna go away. And then I was like, actually no, I'm gonna start doing this like since the beginning, because this is how I dress, and I should be valued for who I am, like 100%. So yeah.
And I really admire that. I really, really admire that. For me, it took some time.
Yeah.
At least 1 year. Like the first year that I arrived here, I was dressing with, as you say, and there is nothing wrong. It's just like the fashion here is that. And I like it. I actually like it. I like the people here dress super beautiful, but
Yeah,
it didn't
it's
feel
true.
authentic for my own self. What about that pressure at work? Because you are working in a pretty big company. The world is the presence of that company is all over the globe, but still is a Swedish company, and you are working in the Swedish environment. How is that interaction? What do you think that as Latina, what are the differences in the job? You said that you worked in Coca-Cola before. How is it right now? What do you bring to the table as a Latina?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I mean, the first thing that impressed me, or like that was a cultural shock here, was that it wasn't that easy to make like friends at work as it was in Peru. I mean, like for example, I think in Peru, like my best friends, or like my closest group of friends are from work, or like people who I used to work with, which is not the case here. But it's because it takes more time for Swedish people to get on that close level of like interactions, or like to open up and so on. So I think that was the first shock. Like also like I don't know, during lunch, like the type of conversations that we had, like about the weather, or like the kids and that kind of stuff, that weren't like that open as I mentioned, right? So that's one thing. But what I really appreciated is that they were super curious about like asking about like Peru, or like about like my country, or like, oh, the food that I was bringing, like, oh, when did you cook today, and how is the food in Peru, and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think I would really appreciate that about like my colleagues. But yeah, you can definitely see the difference. I mean, right now I'm working, as you mentioned, in this Swedish company, but I work a lot also with other countries. So I actually don't work that much with Swedish people, but I do go to the office, and I mostly have these like interactions on like social activities of the company, or like at lunch and so on. But it's nice, and I do have like now like a friend after 3 years, but after I have like a friend at work, which is super nice. But yeah, that has been my experience at work.
Okay, and now the opposite thing, like you've been 3 years here. What have you learned from the European, from the Swedish culture? What resonates with you, or what doesn't resonate with you in this moment?
I think it actually, I was surprised that it resonates more than doesn't resonate. Like at first I was like, oh, they are super different, but actually in some ways I really appreciate how, for example, the society is like well organized. I mean, I super value that, like the security and that kind of stuff that I would love to have in Latin America, but that I try to keep myself, like for example, I would never like throw garbage in the street, and that kind of stuff. Like this part of me is like okay, it's nice, and I can resonate with the society. But also, for example, here in Sweden, there's like this big sense of individualism, or like individualism and independence of people. I really like that. I really admire that. Of course, like there's a need of a balance, of course, right? But I really valued like that people also like are very respectful of spaces, and like this concept of lagom, of like not too much and not too little, like just like what is enough, or like the necessary amount. And that is like a philosophy for life, and even for work. I mean, the fact of like not working crazy hours, and having like time for doing hobbies and time for like enjoying with your friends, with your family. I think that's amazing, and that's like something that if at some point I leave this country, it would be super hard to like not do that. Like whenever I go, like having like spare time to just enjoy and everything is not work. I think that's something I super value in in this country. So yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there is, I feel that there is an additional complexity to you, like if I compare to mine, and is emigrating as a woman is different. I feel in these cultural differences that you were mentioning in Latin America and in Europe, there is also the component that Sweden, for example, is recognized as a country that in gender equality is a bit more advanced than
Yeah.
our countries.
Mhm.
How do you feel that is different emigrating as a woman? What are those special things that happen, or how was your experience in as a woman?
That's actually a very, very good question. Because, and this is like a personal thing. I have never like thought, or like my parents always raised me as like uh, with, in the sense that I don't feel that I cannot do other things or like different things as men, you know, like I think I like able to do whatever I want to. So they never like they were like super open minded, and yeah, they are not probably like the common parents of like a person in Latin America. So my mom is a super empowered woman, and like it started for the fact that I started traveling like by myself, like super when I was super young. So they would never would tell me like, no, like be careful because you're a woman and you cannot do that, or like. So that's why I think it's hard to reply that question, but also because I think, as you mentioned, Sweden is like a country that makes it easier. I would say for women, because you don't feel that much like those differences as you would feel probably in different societies. They are like very equal, or like the equality is like a super strong here. So in like a job, or like even uh, on the dating scene and everything, you know, like yeah. So I actually don't know how to reply that.
Fair, but
Yeah.
I think that is an interesting point because
Yeah.
you were mentioning that you also consider emigrating to other places like Spain,
Yeah.
but here it has that characteristic uh, that I think that we should in some way imitate in Latin America. That gender equality
Yeah.
is not a discussion, is a given. And of course, like we cannot say that it's a perfect society and that everything is equal. We
Yeah,
will
of course.
have to improve, but like the conversation is not a discussion. Is
Mhm.
a conversation on how we progress on it. Um, what about you were mentioning like right now you have this group of friends and there is a bit more diverse. How do you think, especially for the Swedish people or for the
Mhm.
Europeans that you know, how do you think that their perception of Latin America has changed after meeting you?
Mhm. Oh, that's nice. I really hope it has, but no, I'm sure it had. Um, I mean, whenever I meet someone that is interested on my culture, I of course try to be like the best ambassador and like try to bring all like the positive things about Latin America. Uh, Sometimes we as Latinos can tend to like talk a little bit and focus a little bit on the bad side of things, and that's like something that is not good to do because then we keep reinforcing these like conceptions, or like these stereotypes that people have from Latin America, which is like just one story, right? So it's not like the full story. So if we bring this like other side of things, this richness of our culture, and like they can see also through our actions like how good people we are, how we like are behaving good in the society. We are not like we're like educated people. We have like we are super talented people. I mean, I know like a lot of friends that are here, and they are such talented people. And I think that's also another of the reasons why we are Latinos are like right now being super valued in like a lot of companies here in Sweden, for example, too, because we are super passionate with what we do, and we are super like dedicated to. So it's I think we speak through our actions too. So yeah, definitely. I hope I I have changed a little bit of the mindset of the people I have met, in the sense that Latin America is a nice place. It's a place full of like hardworking, passionate people that are really like passionate about also their countries and their like culture, which is what I always try to spread, like this positiveness and like the good things and the good aspects of Latin America and Peru, especially, right?
Of course. And well, and for you and for everyone that is listening, we are doing this podcast in English precisely for that.
Yeah.
And it's because we aim to have an audience, look, first of all, to also include some countries in the Caribbean that don't speak Spanish, and also our friends from Brazil, that the Brazilian community, at least here in Stockholm, is amazing. I love them. But also on a second part is also, we aim with this podcast to also send a message to people that are interested in Latin America, people that are curious about these cultures, like this group of friends that you were mentioning. What, if you could speak to them, what will be the message? What would you like to tell them?
Yeah, well, first of all, I will tell them to be curious and embrace like the curiosity, to be curious, to think that the world is super big. If they have the possibility to travel and like get to know these amazing countries, do it. But if you have not the possibility to do that, which I doubt, but if you do not, like, start just by like getting around like people that are not from your same culture, same country, and you would see that the like there's not just one story, you know, like we are so full of like media and like literatures. I remember I watched this TED talk from Chimamanda Ngozi, where she talks about how dangerous it is to have just one story of a place or a person, because that reinforces a lot of stereotypes, reinforces a lot, and sometimes it creates even pittiness about like about the country. For example, in her case with Africa, and in our case with Latin America, sometimes people think that we emigrate because, I don't know, we are poor countries, or we are countries that has like a lot of political issues, which is true. We are not saying that it's not true, but it's not the only reason. So, I mean, we have amazing countries rich of culture. So I super invite you to be open-minded, that try to visit and like explore, go to restaurants, go to listen to podcasts like this one, for example, and try to surround with people from different countries, and you would see like how amazing is Latin America.
And I think that you're a great example of a successful case of going out of the country. And I know how scary it is. Emigrating is not easy at all.
No.
And
No.
you've been already 4 years outside, right?
3
years outside.
Yeah.
And I know that there is many people in Latin America that will like also to explore the opportunity of going to new countries and maybe having a couple of years outside. What is the message for them? What do you think that they should know? What is the mindset that they should go with?
I think, of course, yeah, you just said it is not easy to of course leave your country, our amazing countries. It is not. I would tell them to always keep their essence. Don't miss your essence, and be ambassadors wherever you are of your country. We're doing a great job, like already being like good for the society in another society, and like spreading the good things that we can do as Latinos. So that would be like my recommendation, and like be ambassadors of our richness, our culture, our our custom. No, that's not the word, but our like
the way that we dress.
Yeah, the way that we dress, exactly. Don't lose that essence. And yeah, I think things will flow. Like when you stop, like I think when you stop like trying to fit in a place, and or like stop like worry so much about like, oh my god, how are they gonna see me in this culture, then you like can flourish in the society. So I think that would be my recommendation.
I love that. That part of flourishing in another society is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I hope that everyone that is right now immigrating and like taking the essence of Latin America to other places can flourish and keeping their essence. Okay, one last thing before we finish that I would like to ask you. As I told you at the beginning, I really admire your love for
Thank
Peru
you.
and for how you represent Peru, especially. If you could recommend one plate, one song, and one book, what do you think? Not necessarily from Peru. I know I asked for Peru because, well, but what will be your recommendation?
So for dish, that's hard, but I would say ceviche. I think that's my favorite one. It's super nice. A song, I would say, because it's super traditional, La Flor de la Canela, that it's a very nice song. Or any other, well, this is not from Eva Guillon, but one from Eva Guillon. I love her. She's a super good ambassador also of our culture. She was recently here in Sweden, actually. And a book, probably one from Mario Vargas Llosa would be. But that's a good one. Yeah, any of Mario Vargas Llosa.
His pure history for Latin America, for sure.
Yes, exactly.
And definitely in the description of the podcast, I will put a recipe for ceviche. And I will put the song and some also recommendations from Vargas Llosa.
Yes, yes.
Anto, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for this conversation. It's super interesting as always talking with you.
Yes, and just before we close, I'm also like I want to thank you for doing this like space. I already told you I think this is super inspiring, and I really hope it becomes super big and everyone can know about our amazing Latino culture. So thank you for doing this.
Thanks to you, Anto. And yeah, thank you so much for everyone for listening to this space. I hope that now you're a bit more curious about our region, that you get to know more our culture, and that you continue supporting this Uprise Latino. Yes. See you soon.
See you.